So thanks for the invitation to this conference. Unfortunately, it's
just a moment.
Still on. It's still an online conference, and what I have seen today morning, that in the conference book for my presentation, you got the wrong abstract. So if you want the actualized abstract, I think you need another text than from my side, but you can find my mail address at the end of the presentation. So the topic today will be the European Green Deal, the so-called tox-free environment, and the belonging skip database. So this is the main topic of my presentation. So why is the European Commission talking about zero pollution, and why do we have in Europe a so-called tox-free environment? You may know already that we have in 2015 a pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and so on, which led to an estimated 9 million premature deaths worldwide. And we have 3 times more deaths than from AIDS, for example, tuberculosis and malaria, which comes normally from air and water pollution. And we have also a very concerning development because air pollution causes also a lot of cases of cancers per year, in total more than 250,000. But we have to ask the politicians, but also, for example, the representatives of the from the companies, is it really realistic to reach a tox-free environment? This is really a very ambitious target from my side. We have already some measures planned, and the European Commission published the measures how to reach this tox-free environment. We have under this strategy, the so-called chemical strategy, and in May 2021 came out the new strategy, and one of these pillars inside of this chemical strategy, we have the so-called skip database, and a responsibility for the skip database is the ECHA, and ECHA means European Chemicals Agency. The second pillar in this chemical strategy, we have the main target for companies, but also for the EU Commission, to set targets regarding a product passport. What does that mean? For example, if you want to place new products on the market in the future, the products will have a so-called product passport, and the product passport will contain a lot of characteristics of this product. For example, recyclability, the content, but also content of this toxic substances. And we will have as a third pillar ongoing work on REACH reviews. So what are the targets then for the manufacturers in the future? You may know that the European Commission is working on a sustainable product initiative, and we will have also some other targets, which means, for example, that chemicals and products must be safe and sustainable during the whole lifetime. The third target would be that substances of concern in products have to be minimized and recycled. The recycled share has to be increased. And we will have the ongoing strategy, which means polluter pays principle. What does that mean? This means if you have a product which causes air pollution or water pollution, then we will have a clear responsibility, which means the manufacturer have to pay for this. But we will have also new targets for recyclers in whole strategy, this new tox-free environment, but also this these new chemical strategies. We have right now already the review of the waste shipment regulation, which means we will have a lot of restrictions of waste which is shipped in former years outside of Europe. And in the future, we will have very strong restrictions in this case, for example, for scrap, but also for a lot of plastic waste. EU Commission will restrict the export of end-of-life vehicles, especially in non-OECD countries. It is also planned to increase the monitoring and the restriction of lead batteries and the waste streams through the Basel Convention. We will get the equal limit for hazardous substances, for virgin and recycled material, and we will get a new label which will be concluded also, for example, in a product passport, which says recycled in the EU. This will be like a marketing label, and I think it's also a very good target to get more recycling material into products. But let's talk also about this new SKIP database. What does SKIP mean? SKIP is an abbreviation of substances of concern in products. It came out already for manufacturers to fill in data in January 21. The data is a database which contains information of substances of concern only. And substances of concern means must be substances which are included in articles or complex objects. The platform, the main target behind this platform is that it should close the information gap which you have right now between a manufacturer and recycler. What does that mean? If, for example, you get end-of-life vehicles or also plastic packaging or other waste streams into a recycling plant, then normally a recycler does not really know what kind of substances of concern are inside the end-of-life vehicle or inside this plastic packagings. And therefore, it will be ensured that information is available throughout the whole life cycle, because the manufacturers have to fill in the data about these substances of concern inside this SKIP database. So we have a lot of different objectives in this database. For example, you must be aware right now, if you are a manufacturer, of these Annex 14 of the REACH regulation. The Annex 14 is the main basis to fill in the SKIP database. And this came out already in 2007 and is increasing from time to time. In the beginning, in 2007, we had around 20 substances. Right now, in 2021, we have already more than 200 substances in this Annex 14. The other target is that it should be reached to provide information for the improving of future waste treatments. This means if you have, for example, some substances of concern identified in waste streams, then there will be an obligation to phase out these substances, to incinerate this waste stream, which is perhaps full of these substances of concern. Another target is to facilitate the monitoring of the use of substances of concern. And also a target in the future will be to enable really whole life cycle treatments. So the question is for today also, who is really obliged to submit data to this database? As I said, it's open now, the database, since January now, almost 12 months. And the EU producers and assemblers, but also the importers, means the EU importers, are obliged to submit data about these substances of concern. They have to submit data during these EIN codes, these global trade item numbers. And there are also some other identifiers which you need to submit whole data to this database. And the question is also very important. What does it mean? What does it mean, substance in an article, or what does it mean, substance in a complex object? As you can see here in this example, you see here this bicycle. It is separated in different parts. And all of these small items, which you can see on this slide, are articles in the case of the SCIP database, but also in the case of a chemical regulation in the European Union. This means if you find substances, like in this wheel, for example, in the rubber of the wheel, if the substance is a substance of concern, then you have to submit the data about these substances into this SCIP database. It's very complicated if you have complex objects, which you see here on this slide, like a printed circuit board. You have a lot of different kind of smaller articles here included, and the SCIP database would like to know what kind of article contains substances of concern, and for which substance we have a higher concentration than 0.1% weight by weight, because this is the main important limit value. It's some kind of a limit value, and if you increase this limit value, then you have to submit the data about the substances of concern. And therefore you have to identify your article which is affected. Then you have to identify the substance of concern, means the name, the concentration range, and also the location of the substance inside of this article. Here's an example of the template. You will see if you log into this SCIP database. And this is an example for such an O-ring. Such O-rings you will find, for example, engines in cars, for example. And normally these O-rings are out of rubber. And normally these O-rings really and indeed contain or could contain substances of concern. And then if we have identified the substance of concern, you need the EC number, you need the CAS number, and also the concentration. And then you can fill in here this template, which you can see on the slide. Therefore, we have a lot of challenges since the SCIP database came out. For example, if you have a car, if you are a car manufacturer, you have to be aware that around 3,000 to 5,000 articles could contain substances of concern over 0.1%. And we also have a lot of suppliers for the same product, but that means that every supplier has to submit this data. This means in total that we will have an enormous number of database entries which are necessary to the high article count and also the modular building. And therefore, there are a lot of costs which are raised for manufacturers, but also for the importers. And therefore, it's really very time-consuming, but also very cost-consuming. And in the future now, we will also have a lot of challenges for recyclers, because the database is made for this information gap between manufacturers and recyclers, and that the data will be used. We need a lot of, let's say, communication campaigns and a lot of trainings for recyclers, that they are able to use this data, because this is really also very complicated. As you can see here on this picture, this is a typical scrapyard from a recycler in Europe. They got a lot of different waste streams, but not on an article level. They get, for example, scrap fractions. And they are working not on the basis of EAN codes, but they're working on, let's say, on the basis of scrap fractions, and not normally in tons, but not in gram or milligram basis. And the main demand is that they also have a high weight input, which means, for example, a throughput rate of 1 to 50 tons per hour. And therefore, it's really very, very ambitious that they are able to look into a database to get information of concern in any fraction of this big scrapyard amount or not. And therefore, I think, and a lot of my colleagues agree with that, it will be very difficult to identify objects in waste streams. And therefore, from our side, from today, skip data not really can be utilized. So I've got some other pictures with examples from different recycling plants to show you why it's really very difficult right now to use this data. And we always have to ask the question, when and how does it make sense, really? You can see here again a yard which collects end-of-life vehicles. And if you want to use the data from the skip database, you have to separate a car, like you can see here on this slide. A car normally contains around 30,000 parts, different parts, articles, and you have to be aware if you want to recycle this car, and if you would like to be in line with this new regulation, then you have to be aware and have to identify in which kind of these articles could be substances of concern. And this is the same for e-scrap. This is a picture of one of the e-scrap yards in the middle of Germany. They